Let us start with the DS questions now. It's again a twister type DS. You have to mark option A if question can be answered using one of the statement alone but cannot be answered using the other statement alone. That means if A alone is sufficient, B alone is not sufficient, or A alone is not sufficient but B alone is sufficient, you have to mark option A. B, if question can be answered using either of the statement alone, that means if the question can be answered using A alone as well as B alone, mark option B. C, if question can be answered using both the statement together but cannot be answered using either statement alone, that means A alone is not sufficient, B alone is not sufficient, but their combination is sufficient. And mark D if question cannot be answered at all. Okay, so let's move to the first question. Is a ballpoint pen costlier than an ink pen? Statement 1. Statement 1 says 5 sets of 4 ball pens plus 3 ink pens is same as 4 sets of 3 ballpoints and 5 ink pens. That means 20B plus 15I is equal to 12B plus 20I, or 8B is equal to 5I. That gives you B upon I is 5 by 8. So we had find the ratio of B and I, which is sufficient enough to give the answer that whether a ballpoint is costlier or a ink point is costlier. So I can say statement A alone is sufficient. Now let's check statement number 2. Cost of 6 sets of 6 ballpoint pens and 4 ink pens is same as cost of 12 sets of 3 ballpoint and 2 ink pens. This gives you 36B plus 24I is equal to 36B plus 24I. Obviously these two quantities are equal, so we do not get anything from this data. That means statement B alone is not sufficient. This does not give you any extra information, right? So A alone is sufficient, B alone is not sufficient. That means I have to mark option A. That is my final answer. Let's move to the next question. This is a quite tricky question, right? So the question says that there are 3 rods of lengths L1, L2 and L3 centimeter such that no 2 of them are of the same length. If L1, L2 and L3 are integers, can we exactly measure x centimeter using 3 rods where x is an integer? Here x signifies any integer, right? Any positive integer. So x means any positive integer. So the question is whether you can measure any integral length using these 3 rods or not. That is your question, right? So it is very clear that statement A alone or B alone is definitely not sufficient because the information is very less. Now we have to check the combination of the two. Now if you see the numbers here, L1 plus L2 is 100 centimeter and L2 plus L3 is 201 centimeter, right? So if I subtract double of equation 1 from this equation, so I'll get 1 centimeter, right? So what I'm saying is L2 plus L3 minus twice of L1 plus L2 gives you 201 minus 2 into 100, that is 1 centimeter. Okay, so this combination is of length 1 centimeter. Now how do I measure practically on this? What will I do is I'll put a rod of L2 along with it side by side I'll put L3, and on the parallel of this I'll put L1 and L2. So I'll put L1 here, L2 here, and put a mark on this. Again I replace this N1 and L2 starting from this point. So this is L1 and this is L2, and put a mark on this. So what I practically have done is L1 plus L2 is this total length, and I have subtracted twice of L1 plus L2 from this. That means this length is equivalent to 1 centimeter. So if I can measure 1 centimeter using these three rods, I can measure any integral length. That means using the combination of these two, I can definitely find the answer. I can definitely measure any rod which is of any length, any integral length, right? So my answer has to be C. I hope it is clear now. Once again I'll give you the solution. In this process I have measured 1 centimeter, so I know that this length is of 1 centimeter, right? So if this length is 1 centimeter, if I have to measure 10 centimeter, I'll use this process 10 times. If I have to measure 5 centimeter, I will use this process 5 times more, right? And so on forth. Next question. Is PQR a right triangle? Statement 1 gives you angle Q minus angle P is more than 0. So, which basically means angle Q is more than angle P. So this is alone not sufficient, definitely, right? There can be multiple possibilities. Statement 2 alone. If I use statement 2 alone, it will give you angle P plus angle Q is equal to angle R. And I know that angle P plus angle Q plus R is nothing but 180 degrees. If I put this equation here, I will replace P plus Q with R. So twice of angle R is equal to 180 degree. That means angle R is coming out to be 90 degree, which is a right angle. So statement 2 alone is sufficient. Again, I will mark option A. Next question. If m and n are consecutive positive integers, is m more than n? So m and n are consecutive positive integers. First point, is m more than n, right? In a DS question, whenever you ask is this greater than this, is this an even number, is this is odd, I have only two possible answers, either yes or no. So any statement which gives you either of these two answers, yes or no, it is sufficient to give the answer, right? I do not need to find the exact answer, I just need to find yes or no. Okay, so first statement gives you m minus n and n plus 1, m minus 1 and n plus 1 are consecutive positive integers. Okay, so there are two possibilities. One is n minus 1 is equal to k and m minus 1 is equal to k and n plus 1 is equal to k plus 1, consecutive positive integers, right? Or it could be n plus 1 is equal to k and m minus 1 is equal to k plus 1. So in case 1, I'll get m is equal to k plus 1 and n is equal to k. So it is clear from this that these two are consecutive positive integers, and m is k plus 1 and n is k. So definitely m is more than n. So statement A, so case 1 is possible, right? Case 2 gives you m is equal to k plus 2 and n is equal to k minus 1. These two are not consecutive integers, which does not satisfy my condition. That's why this case is ruled out. mind this point, this case is ruled out. It is nothing to do with it gives you answer or not, right? So I have to take only this case now. And this statement, this case is sufficient enough to give the answer that m is more than n. That means A alone is sufficient to give the answer. B alone gives you m is an even integer. Obviously this is alone not sufficient, so my answer is A. One more point here is, if statement A alone is sufficient, B alone is not sufficient, I will never check the combination of the two part, right? Because if we come back, third statement says A alone is not sufficient and B alone is not sufficient, but the combination is sufficient. If either of the statement alone is sufficient, I will never go for the combination. Never check it, okay? Come again. Next question. If A, B, C are integers, is A minus B plus C greater than A plus B minus C? So question is A minus B plus C greater than A plus B minus C? Or I can rewrite this equation as I can cancel A here and we can reshuffle it, so it will give you 2C more than 2B, or is C more than B? So ultimately the question is asking me, is C more than B, right? Statement A gives you B is positive, it is alone not sufficient, right? Because it gives you information about B, not about C. Statement B alone again is not sufficient because it gives you information about C but not B. But if you combine them, so I will get the information of B as well as C. Now C is negative and B is positive. C is negative and B is positive. That means the answer to this question is no. And I got the answer using the combination of the two. Right? So my answer is C.